Soon as I could drive a car, I started going further afield and hiking and backpacking, and got into climbing, and over the years, mountaineering and cycling, and done just a lot of stuff in the outdoors. But what's interesting for me is as I've gotten older, things have come and gone, and I've come full circle. And my joy is pretty much just hiking and backpacking now. I mean, I do other stuff, still get on my bike some, don't climb anymore, ski a little bit, not as much as I used to. So some of those things I enjoyed for years kind of came, backpacking was part of that. But now, you know, I just love being in the wilderness. Portland feels like home, but when I'm in the wilderness, that's when anxiety drops and I feel at home. So I'm appreciative of this last opportunity formally here at the shop to share any knowledge I can bestow. I will say the beauty is I'm still learning too. Every time I go on an adventure or go with someone different, I learn something new. I learn a new recipe. I learn about a new shoe that I haven't tried. I try a new pack. I find a new trail. I just learn how to do something differently that maybe I was set in my ways for years doing. It's like, well, that works that way too, maybe better. So I'm still learning. So I never liked the word expert. I feel like in the strict definition, maybe I am, but I don't like the word expert because for me, it brings up connotations that I just kind of know everything, and I don't. I'm still learning. I feel like I have learned a lot, and I do know a lot, but still learning keeps it fun and stuff. So, I mean, I've got things to talk about, but what I'd rather do is just open it up to questions. Jess will be back in a second to take questions from those guys, I hope, because I can't hear you guys. But I can hear you guys. So I just open it up to questions. It could be anything about backpacking, through hiking, being in the wilderness, anything.
What are some of the things that have changed over the years with how you look at how to pack?
So the question was how have things changed for me is how I pack for like adventures and stuff.
Yeah, just like, what are some things that maybe at some point like I need this, and also you're like,
right,
I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, what has changed about? I'm just going to repeat the question as best I can. So you know, what has changed for me as far as equipment choices over the years, things like that. I would say in a general theme, I've just lightened up. So alluding to kind of what you were saying, it's been, yeah, there's always new pieces of gear. There's always cool new stuff. And I love gear. I work in a gear shop. I mean, I love gear, but I carry less than I used to. So my first 2-week backpack was on the last 200 miles of the PCT into Canada. Gosh, that was about 2000, 2001. That was my first long one. I'd done some longer expedition climbing, like three weeks up to a month, but backpacking, 2 weeks backpacking was the longest I'd done. I had 45 pounds on that. People still do that. That's fine. I'm not going to poo-poo that. But when I went through there on the PCT in 2012, completing the trail, my pack probably weighed at that point between 20 and 25 pounds, maybe a little more with 6 or 7 days of food. But what took 13 days with that heavy pack years ago as a thru hiker took, trying to remember, I think it took less than a week or about a week, you know, because I was doing more miles. So I've just discovered that I need less, but the main thing that's changed is I've gotten lighter. And on that trip, I was sitting on my heavy pack, taking a break, and not a thru hiker, but an ultralight hiker came by going southbound, had tiny little pack, and he was in the middle of nowhere, just like I was. And we talked for just a second, and he's like, "You don't have to hike 30 miles to go light." And off he went with his little pack, and I picked my heavy pack back up. So that kind of I think I attribute that conversation of about 30 seconds with telling me it's like, okay, you need to get lighter. And yeah, you don't have to equate that with doing big miles. Of course, I did when I started through hiking, but at that point, I didn't know I was going to be a through hiker. So lightening up, discovering new lighter. So when I wear out a piece of gear, I just start shopping for something to replace it that's lighter, but still functional, still going to keep my safety level up. I never want to go so light or with so little that I don't feel safe. That depends on the trip. If it's an overnight on Mount Hood in August, sure, I can do a 7-pound base weight and an 11-pound pack and do an overnighter. Would I do that on a 7-day trip in the middle of nowhere wilderness? No, I'd probably have an 11 or 12-pound base weight, maybe a 10-pound base weight. But yeah, getting lighter, just always looking for when I'm replacing something just for a lighter piece of gear. Does that answer a bit?
Yeah.
Was there more to your question?
No,
Yeah.
think, it's almost like the idea of when you were through hiking. What were some things that you started with that made it
Right. So as a through hiker, the question was, what did I start out with that I didn't need? I had gotten my pack fairly light by the time I did the PCT in 2012. That was 10 or 11 years after that experience I just told you about. So I had already gotten pretty light, but I know I sent some camera gear home. Maybe I just had a little point and shoot, I believe, but I had some filters, and I think I might have had a little tripod that I wasn't using, things like that. I sent home. I might have sent home a couple of articles of clothing or something, but I really didn't send that much home because I had spent 10 years getting light. But I would say that the main difference between through hiking and backpacking is it's just the emphasis on what you're doing. So as a backpacker, I may carry a little bit more, not always, not usually, but sometimes I might carry a little bit more if I'm going with friends. And you were asking me, Jess, I'm pointing at Jess. Jess was asking me, what chair do you take? And I'm like, I don't take a chair. I have a chair, and I might take it if we're all going backpacking as a group and you're all taking chairs, and it's I can afford that extra pound or two on my pack. Sure, I'll take a chair. But as a through hiker, you're hiking 12, 13, 14 hours a day, every day, except rest days in town, which is every week or two. You'll take a half a day or a day off. So you're hiking all day. So I don't carry a book to read, because when I get to camp, I do dinner, I'm in my sleeping bag, I'm up at first light, I'm hiking again. As a backpacker, I usually don't take a book, but I have books on my phone I can read. I may take a book if it's that kind of trip. A winter trip, I will take a book because the nights are really long, right? If you've done any winter trips, a 13, 14-hour night, it's hard to be in your sleeping bag that long, and it's, so I'll take a book or something like that. But backpacking can be like through hiking, or it can be almost like car camping. It can be a mix. It can be whatever you want it to be. How far are you going? Are you going in a base camping, or are you doing long distances? If you're doing long distances, I think you should go lighter. I mean, it's benefited for me. As a through hiker, there's just no reason to carry extra stuff that I'm just not going to use. There's no reason to take a chair. Even if I did set it in camp every night, I'm going to set it in it for 10 minutes. I'm going to carry it for 13 hours. And I have a little 18-ounce chair. I use it in my van. It's great in that. But that's, the main thing for me over the years is just getting lighter. I'm 63 now. I'll be 64 in July. I carried heavy packs backpacking when I was younger. I carried 70-pound packs as a mountaineer. When I did Denali, and both times, but the second time in 97, I left base camp with 110 pounds of gear. 30 or 40 of that was in a sled. I could barely pick my pack up. When I did a NOLS National Outdoor Leadership School mountaineering course in Alaska, my pack was so heavy that I literally needed help to put it on. I don't want to do that anymore, and I can't do that anymore. I think getting light has saved my body. You know, do things hurt? Yeah, sure, my knees, my feet hurt, but I can still hike without a lot of pain. I can still through hike and do 25-mile days. I don't know if I can do that now. The last long through hike was 2017, where I was doing 25 miles a day every day for over 1,000 miles. I did do the Colorado Trail though in September, and did fine at 20-mile days. So I was pretty happy with the whole body, but getting light made the difference. So yeah. Any questions on the Zoom yet, or you guys, whoever's next? Or yes.
I struggle with dinner food.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you eat. And backpacking.
Oh boy, we get to go into my pack.
Tell me about backpacking. I mean, also like cool too. But
Right.
yeah, tell me what you eat for dinner.
I definitely like to eat. So let me just grab my food bag. This is my favorite pack, Hyperlight. I've used a lot of different packs, a lot of favorite packs. This is the one I use the most. So I just threw some things in here. This isn't maybe exact. It's pretty close to what I would eat on like maybe a 3-day trip or so. I didn't count up the calories or anything, but go ahead and laugh, Jeff. Fritos, 160 calories per ounce. 3 ingredients: corn, salt, oil. When you're hiking big miles every day, you want all 3 of those things. They're awesome, and they're tasty. Titanium cup usually goes in there with a cozy. If you got questions about that, I can ask. A little spoon. But you asked specifically about dinner and maybe breakfast. Favorite of a lot of backpackers are these Knorr sides. Back in the day, they were made by Lipton. Now they're made by Knorr. This is a power rice blend burrito bowl. So this takes about 10 minutes to simmer, but I'll usually in my pot, if I need to simmer something, I'll bring it to a boil. I'll put it in my pot in this Reflectex cozy. That keeps it hot. I can usually turn the stove off and just save fuel. I don't like to carry a lot of fuel. So that's one meal. Now I'm vegan now. I've been vegetarian for 20 years, but I've been vegan for about 3 years. There's only a couple of flavors of these that they don't say vegan, but there's no milk or animal products that I've found. So there's a couple of those I will eat. Yeah, they're cheaper than the backpacking meals. These fancy ones. These are kind of a fancier version. Used to get these for $1. These have sustained a lot of through hikers, especially when you can get them for $1. These are a couple of bucks. On the front here, I do freeze-dried meals some, but it's usually it's always, this says vegetarian, but this one is vegan. It's plant-based. Cuban coconut, black beans, and rice. So kind of similar to this, but different. But when I use these, I buy the ones that are large enough. I split these in half, and then this is half of one of these. I vacuum pack it. So I split it in half. I have to have some extra oil packets because there's only one oil pack for the whole thing. I'll throw an extra. So I'll make 2 of these and put an oil pack in both. And then with a couple of tortillas, I love tortillas. Digging in my messy bag that I threw together. Tortillas are a staple for me, lunch, dinner, but I'll throw some of this on a tortilla and make a burrito. I'll definitely make a couple of tortillas, make 2 burritos out of this. So I basically get 4 burritos out of one of these two meals. So I'll do that. I'll also I do a lot of rice and beans as a vegetarian. That's oatmeal. So that's oatmeal that I made up with some coconut milk powder and cinnamon and just, nuts and berries and stuff like that. That's a breakfast. There's another breakfast here that's kind of similar, but with couscous. And these vacuum packer meals, the other reason I can do that, my naturopath friend hates this, but you can put boiling water in these. So I can, just like you can reconstitute in this, by putting them in this, I can open it up, put water, I'll take it carefully without spilling it, put it in my pot with the cozy, or I'll take I don't know if I did, this Reflectex stuff. You can even make a cozy to keep it hot so that it reconstitutes without having to run your stove. All I have to do is boil water. Some of these don't even need to boil, just hot if the water is treated. And then I do just quick rice, and I get dehydrated beans, usually online. Used to be able to get them in the grocery store. They're hard to find, and I'll put some, like, I think this has some dehydrated or freeze-dried kale chips in there just for some nutrition. It's not as much about calories as nutrition. I'll take some Cholula's hot sauce. I love burritos. So this is a burrito. So burrito is my favorite meal. Yeah, so that's kind of dinner. I'll do granola sometimes. On a hotter trip, I may just do cold granola, with some kind of plant-based milk and just add stuff, a lot of nuts, things like that for protein. And then I didn't bring a tea bag for some reason. Sometimes I'll do a tea bag at night, but I will do some kind of instant coffee, usually the Starbucks tea. They're the best for me. They're the best instant coffees I've found. Yeah. In the van, I do pour over drip good coffee. On the trail, I do this. They're good, but they're not that good. Fred Meyer's, where I usually shop, the one I've seen you, Deb, a couple times, 2-3 times in. They have a little section. They have like this freeze-dried little veggies. That's where I get the kale. It's on the aisle near like where the nuts are and things like that. Not a ton of calories. This whole package is 100 calories and it's one serving, but I'll split this into like 2 or 3 servings and add it to like oatmeal, cereal, that kind of thing, just for some nutrition and stuff, because it's just freeze-dried fruit. There's nothing added, things like that. So that was dinner and breakfast. We'll see if somebody has questions about lunch. All right.
That was like somebody asked, can you give an overview of what and how you eat on long
On long hikes. So,
seeing yourself physically
well, emotionally, burritos and corn chips. When I leave town on a through hike, there's always some fresh veggies, fresh fruit in the pack. That's, an avocado. I love avocados. There's never a better avocado than the one you have on trail. It's just amazing. There's probably, okay, I'll admit it, the pits usually go way down in the woods, so there's probably avocado trees growing all over the place. Probably not. And I probably shouldn't share that I throw those out, but I do. So yeah, I talked about dinner and breakfast. So when I'm through hiking, I do a lot of mail drops. Because especially as a vegan. Now, as a vegetarian, it was fine. I mean, most small towns with a market or something, you can find, this kind of stuff. There's a lot more choices for vegetarians. As a vegan, in small towns especially, it's kind of tough, even though Fritos are vegan. So I will on a through hike, I will mail myself a lot of the meals. I will just plan on buying perishable stuff in town, fruit, veggies, that kind of thing. But I'll do a lot of mail drops. When I did the CT, there was a really good grocery store in Breckenridge. That was my last resupply. So I just planned on, okay, we need to learn how to resupply as a vegan. And I knew they would have a good grocery store. I can't remember the name of the store, but it was owned by Kroger, which is the big kind of East Coast grocery store that owns Fred Meyer's, has for several years. So I'd go in the store and I felt like I was in Fred Meyer's. It's like, oh, this is going to be easy. And it was. I got everything I needed because everything was even arranged very similarly to Fred Meyer's. Some kind of best market, something. Anyway, Kroger owns a lot of grocery stores. For lunch, I'm going to have food going all over the place here. Let me throw a few things back in. Fritos, of course. Fritos can go on my burritos, add a little crunch. They can go in anything. Dehydrated potatoes with Fritos for a little crunch and flavor. I eat a lot of nuts. I don't know if you guys can see this, but a lot of nuts, mixed nuts, a lot of nut butters. I do these little Skippy things. You can get better quality ones like almond butters and stuff, and they're good and probably better, but these are cheap. So I do do that on tortilla, on crackers. I don't think I put any crackers in, but I do a lot of bars. I do a lot of Lara bars. I do a lot of Cliff bars. My favorite here at the shop, and I'm losing my voice already. This is bad timing. Shop blocks from Cliff. And this is the one I usually eat. Why? Not because I like the flavor, which I do. It's black cherry, but this is 2 servings, 100 calories per serving, 50 milligrams of caffeine per serving. So in normal life, I have coffee in the morning. I'll have another cup of coffee. I'm usually done with coffee by 1 or 2, so I can sleep that night. But on the trail, I have my Via in the morning, and at about 11, 12, 1 o'clock, I'm like, I want more coffee. So this is kind of my pick-me-up. Well, I usually eat the whole thing. So it's 200 calories, 100 milligrams. So it's roughly like a half a cup of coffee. If I have extra Vias, I've been known to fire up my stove and do coffee at lunch. On the PCT, I got into doing that on some of my through hikes. If I would throw some extras in, and if I had extra fuel, or I would just, if the water was treated, I'd just warm it up and just have warm. I don't like cold coffee. I don't like cold Via coffee in particular. But anyway, sometimes I'll just do that. But those Cliff bars are good. Another brand that we carry here at the shop that I really like. These aren't strictly vegan because Kate's Real Food Bars out of Idaho. They have honey in there. I'm not the strictest of vegans, and I don't push veganism on anything. It's a personal choice for me for ethical stuff mainly. But she puts honey in most of her things, and I do a little honey. I use goose down. I try to source, especially goose. I try to source it from ethical. There are more ethical ways to source down. There's less ethical ways. Thermarest, which this is a bag that I'm currently using. Feathered Friends, they pass certain standards for ethically sourcing their down. And does that make it right as a vegan? No, but it eases my conscience a little bit. The other way I look at it is that a goose down bag lasts forever, where the synthetic is petroleum based, and they don't last forever. So I justify it that way. But Kate's bars, I don't know. I got to remember where I found these little miniature pro bars. I think I found them at Grocery Outlet. Grocery Outlet can be a really good place to get stuff like this really cheap, because these are not cheap. But I got a big bag of them, and they were like less than $1 a piece. Things like that. Tortillas. Sometimes I'll have some vegan cheese. I don't do that as much on trail. I will backpacking. On through hiking, it can be hard to find in small towns and big towns. I'll buy a block of vegan cheese, just not a lot of calories in it, but I like it. I like the taste, so I'll do that. I mean, that's kind of it. A lot of bars, a lot of peanut butter, a lot of nuts, tortillas, and then you saw my dinners and breakfasts. That's kind of it. I try to get 3,500 calories a day in, which is enough for backpacking. For through hiking, that's not nearly enough, which is why when you come into town, it's like, get out of the way. Don't get between me and the food. And that's every through hiker. It's like hiker hunger. I probably in the 3,500 a day for just I might have a little less if I'm just doing easy backpack and my metabolism's not ramped. But these next few months I'm going to be hopefully doing a lot of trips, and my appetite's gonna go up. And yeah, but through hiking, I don't know, I figure I probably burn 5,000 a day, so that's a deficit. And I usually lose on the PCT I was pretty light to start and still lost 17 pounds. So I was really thin at the end. On the CDT, I was even thinner. I lost almost 20 pounds and I had less to lose. So almost got unhealthy light on that one. But that was such a long, tough trail. So I hope that answered the question. Please ask more specific if I didn't cover something on that. Yes. We got plenty of time. We got plenty of time.
Fuel.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I always do is I seem like I always carry too much fuel
Mm-hmm.
on every trip because I'm so afraid of having nothing but freeze dried and not enough food or a bad
Yep.
balance. I use a stove right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for asking that question. I'm prepared for that one. I didn't bring the little scale. You guys know what a little kitchen, you guys have a kitchen scale. If you don't, get one. If you guys don't have a kitchen scale, get one. I weigh everything. That's how you know what your pack's gonna weigh. It helps you decide between pieces of gear. If one piece of gear is a little lighter than another piece of gear and they both work, I'm taking the lighter one. But to answer your question about how do I know how much fuel to take, it takes a little time, takes a little practice, but there's usually a cap on these. I put this is something I learned from a friend. I usually get rid of the cap because it weighs a couple grams. It weighs less than this little baggie does, which I cut the Ziploc off because I didn't need it. I usually put my fuel canister in the bag in my pot because the pot's wet and it can rust and things like that. That was a trick somebody taught me and it works. But I want to cover this so dirt doesn't get in there. So since I don't have the cap, that's another reason. But if you can see, this canister full was 7.5 ounces. If you look on the label, there's 4 ounces of fuel. So 7.5 and 4. I don't know if you guys can see that, but so this WRR, this was a canister that I used on an 8-day trip last August in the Wind River Range is what WRR stands for. When I got home, I weighed the canister. It weighed 4.875 ounces. That means when you do the math, there's still 1 1/3 ounces of fuel left in here. So if I do the math, and I did the math at some point, it was like roughly a half an ounce of fuel a day I was using on a stove that I didn't think would do that. I was really worried I wasn't going to have enough fuel on that trip. But this little Olecamp ion stove is what I use now for most backpacking. I've used a lot of my through hikes. I've used jet boils. They're not the lightest, but they're super efficient. So this little setup though, this little stove weighs just over 1.5 ounces. And for most trips, I like it. But that's what I would say, dude, to figure out how much fuel. Weigh it, mark it after every trip. If you do an overnight, anytime you use it and you end up back home, reweigh it, write it on there. I didn't bring one, but I've got some canisters that there's writing all the way around because I just keep using it. But at some point, you can do the math and get an idea for your stove, the way you cook, how much fuel you're using, on average. I always kind of fudge a little bit to make sure. But that's what I liked about jet boil. I mean, I could do it right down almost to the gram on jet boil. It was so efficient. And that's why I liked it for through hiking. But I did the Colorado Trail with this stove, and it did fine. But yeah, just weighing your canister, doing the math, figuring out how much you use for how you cook. It's going to be different for everybody. It is what it is. But when you figure it out, then you'll know, once you kind of start getting an idea, if you have a 4-night trip and your stove uses 1/2 to 3/4 of an ounce a night. And when I say a night, that's dinner and breakfast the next morning. That's how I look at it. So a 4-day trip would be 3 nights. So if my stove's 1/2 ounce a night, I need a canister with 1.5 ounces of fuel. So this one's got just less than 1.5 ounces. That would cut it close on a 3-night trip, but it would do a 2-night trip. I'll end up with canisters with, 1/4 ounce of fuel. I'll use those in the van to use them up or something. Does that help? Is that,
So what notes do you make on your can? How many boils, how much cooking time?
I've seen people on YouTube do all kinds of stuff, but all I do is I just, on this particular one, I wish I'd brought a better example. On this particular one, I know this was a 7-night trip. So it started with 4 ounces. It had 1 1/3. So I used a little over 3.5 ounces. So 7 nights, if I'm doing the math right, that's about a 1/2 ounce a night, right?
So you're not recording each night, you're recording beginning of trip, end of trip.
Right. Because I'm not taking my scale. I don't have a way to do it on the trail. So, but if I go out tonight for an overnighter and I come back and I reweigh it and it weighs 3/4 of an ounce, then I'll write that down. Just each time I come back home, I'll just weigh it and then I'll do the math. Certainly write it on the can, write what you think you're using. I've seen people do that. I have a horrible memory, but for some reason I can remember these things. I can remember stuff like this, but I can't remember my own name sometimes. But yeah, whatever notes help you, but that's how to do it. Just weighing the canister, dividing it by the number of nights that you've used it. Get an idea of how efficient your cooking system is, and then you'll know. I was in charge of fuel for a 2-night trip with a friend years ago in the gorge. And on the second morning, we fired up the stove. We were cooking fancy meals. We cooked breakfast, turned it off. We're eating, okay, get the water going for coffee. He, like me, hates cold coffee. Turn the stove on, light it, put the pot on, done. I'm like, oh, ran out of fuel. My friend was furious. Not furious, I'm exaggerating. He was not happy because he did not like cold coffee either. So we hiked 13 miles we didn't drink cold coffee. I would now. It's like, I'll drink cold coffee, whatever. And there's no way I'm hiking 13 miles without my morning coffee, right? But we did for some reason. Came out at Cascade Locks and went straight to somewhere to get coffee. But that's like I think the last time I ran out of fuel. I don't think I'd started doing this practice at that point. So, and I just guessed wrong for 2 people. Does that help? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Can you remind us the name of that stove?
This is made by Ole Camp. It's called the Ion. We sell it here at the shop. You'll also see it. It's made by a company called Fire Maple. Fire Maple makes a lot of little stoves that then other companies will sometimes put their name on. Ole Camp is a brand name. We have a distributor that we get some of this stuff from as a small shop called Liberty Mountain. Ole Camp is one of their brands. So they get these, I think, I'm saying this right, they get these from Fire Maple and they put Ole Camp on them. But it's a Fire Maple or an Ole Camp Ion. There is a little stove you'll see with ultra lighters called the BRS. I don't know what that stands for. It's made in China. I had one. It's even lighter than this. I just found it not be very durable. It had what we figured out was these arms weren't, it was cheap. It was like $15. This is $50. The $15 version, these weren't hardened how they harden metal. And after a while, these arms would start to do that. And I saw it on YouTube and I'm like, well, mine hasn't done that. Huh, yes, it is. I hadn't noticed it yet. I have a friend that has one and it's so warped that, I mean, it's like, you need to replace his pot's like wobbling. It's like, why are you still using that? But the Ole Camp one, I mean, I've used this for hundreds of miles. I would take it on through hike. It's been good.
Cool question. Did
Sure.
you bring just that canister for your Wind River trip? Or did you bring
I
more
took
than
one. Because I had used this stove. So the question is, did I just take this one canister? Yes. I was nervous about it, but because I had done what we're talking about here over time, and I'd been playing with the stove off and on for a year, I had discovered that if I was really careful, it was a 1/2 ounce a day. And at a 1/2 ounce a day with 4 ounces, that should be 8 nights. The trip was actually the trip was 8 nights. The first day was really short. So it turned out I had a 1/2 ounce had an
If you were to
ounce and a
go
half left.
By yourself
Mhm.
on the trip, would you have taken just that? Would you have chanced it?
The question was, would I have chance just taking this by myself? On that particular trip, probably, because it wasn't going to be the end of the world if I ran out of fuel. I'd have to drink cold coffee. But I think my last couple of breakfasts, I know that's such a hardship. I know it sounds so bad, especially in the world right now, right? But the last few mornings, I was doing granola and not hot dinners. I made or not hot breakfast because so I knew I'd need less fuel. I usually use treated water, filtered water, treated water, so I don't have to bring it to a boil unless the meal needs boiling. Like these freeze drieds need boiling. You got to boil those and they have to sit for 15 minutes. But some of the meals, like my bean and rice, it doesn't have to boil. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes with just good hot water. That saves fuel. So just things to save fuel like that. So I probably would have, just because on that trip, it's like if I'd run out on the last day, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. I still had a way to get water. My food was still somewhat usable. My last dinner, I think, was something that I could have just cold soaked if I had to, that kind of thing. But I have taken extra canisters on trips, because I don't want to run out. And I certainly would on a cold trip where your stove is really important.
You save fuel by using your cookies though, right?
And I save. So yeah, the question is, I save fuel by using my cozy. I bring this to a boil. If I'm putting food in here or whatever, my food then is either in some kind of cozy, or I'll just take the bag and just put it in here. I'll use an aluminum foil instead of the lid that comes with this because it's lighter. And I feel like it holds heat in a little bit better. So, I'll let this set for 5 or 10 minutes. And now I'm not having to simmer something that maybe I should have simmered 5 or 10 minutes. Might food be a little bit crunchy, el dente or whatever you call it? Sometimes. But some meals like dehydrated potatoes, warm water, 2 minutes, they're done. Those beans and rice, those beans reconstitute in 5 minutes with just hot water. Quick rice reconstitutes just fine in 5 minutes with hot water, close to boiling, but hot water. Quick rice isn't the best nutritional, but I use it backpacking because I'm lazy. I use it at home sometimes too. But anyway, does that answer the question? Cool. Yes.
You said you don't like the label expert because you think there's things that you don't know that you still
Right.
have to learn.
Right.
What are some things that you would like to learn, or that you think you're not necessarily an expert on in terms of backpacking?
What would I like to learn? Because I don't like to call myself an expert. What would I like to learn? I can always learn tricks for getting lighter. And there's tricks I've learned that I don't use because they don't work for me. So sometimes I learn stuff, try it, doesn't work for me. There's a YouTuber that I watch called Jupiter Hikes. He's got a 6-pound base weight. I can do it on an overnight, but I wouldn't do it on big trips like he does. He's comfortable with it. But what would I like to learn? That's a great question. I may have to think about that one. I feel like I'm always learning about me, about my body, not just necessarily gear, but I feel like I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about, and I still want to learn. I still want to learn to be more meditative when I hike instead of cursing because I'm tripping on roots on the AT. I want to be more meditative when I'm hiking sometimes. So I'm always striving to get more in here when I'm hiking. That'll always be something I'm striving to do, whether I'm hiking or regular life, but just always looking for, new ways to, what was it? There was something I learned. Well, this has been a while, but like the fuel canister.
Sorry, we have quite an actress over here.
There's another, for people on Zoom, there's a presentation going next door. So if you hear yelling, it's just a simulation. The little plastic bag, whatever I did with that, that went on here, that was a trick I've learned. But your question was, what do I want to learn? Yeah, you're getting me with that one. Huh. Keep that question. I know. Well, so the question started is, I think I said off camera before we started that I don't like the word expert because to me, it says to me that I know everything and I'm not learning anymore. So I just don't like that label. So I like to always feel like that I can learn something from someone. You know, I didn't learn this on my own. I learned that from someone else. I learned the plastic bag thing to keep rust out of my pot. I learned the cozy from someone else. The plastic bag that I've lost, that I keep my fuel canister in instead of the cap in the pot to keep the rust out. Yes, it's here somewhere. Let me keep thinking about that. That's a great question. Yeah, something when I stop trying, something will pop into my head. It's like, oh yeah, I need to learn that. Another one? Sure.
So shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, I switched many years ago from heavy hiking boots to light hikers, and then now running shoes.
Mm-hmm.
But I still always sacrifice like 2 pounds or whatever it is for chacos.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, I needed them, and because the boots were just so horrendous, you needed to get out of them.
Camp
Now
shoes.
I keep them for. I don't even like the running shoes feel good enough. I don't even feel like I need to change.
Mm-hmm.
But hiking for river crossing, but it's
Mhm.
a lot of weight. And I was curious, like, what do you do for footwear in general and river crossing?
So the question for the Zoom folks was, what do I do for footwear and river crossings and things like that? And she was talking about camp shoes, things like that. I have a variety of shoes that I use. I need to do more yoga. This is my favorite. This is my favorite off-trail shoe. I don't know if you can see that. You probably can't see it on the Zoom. Sola Sportiva Bushido. It's kind of narrow, so if you got wide feet, sorry, it's the best off-trail shoe going, but not if you have wide feet. I have fairly narrow feet, so I'll use this shoe off-trail. I pretty much use trail runners. I've through hiked in Altras because they have a wide toe box. They're super popular. I'm kind of though going away from those, not because of the wide toe box, because I've discovered a little bit more drop in the heel is better for me. If you're familiar with Altras, they're a 0 drop, so the heel is the same altitude basically as the toes. But they have a wide toe box, so it's the most popular brand of shoes for through hikers for sure. They're light, they're fairly stable, but the wide toe box, less blisters, things like that. But I use trail runners. I've been using some Hoka Speed Goats. I did those on the CT Colorado Trail. I really liked those. But to get to your question, I pretty much only take the shoes that I'm wearing. I used to take, certainly like you said, when I used to wear boots, I had camp shoes. You got to get out of boots, especially if they're wet. But trail shoes, and there might be a trip that I take some shoes if it's going to be really cold and I've got to do a stream crossing or something. I don't want to be in wet shoes if I can help it. But by and large, during the 3 seasons of backpacking, maybe it's just me as a thru hiker, but I've just gotten used to having wet feet. Again, it's to carry it. I won't carry a camp shoe for me, and this is my choice. I won't carry camp shoes for 12 hours just to use them for a few hours around camp. Yes, they would be nice for stream crossings to keep my shoes dry. But the bottom line is shoes are going to get wet anyway, if it rains or grass or whatever. So I've just gotten so used to walking with wet feet as long as it's not cold. Now that has bitten me a couple of times. I have trouble with my feet now because of the Continental Divide Trail at 12,000 feet in May, early June, snow melt, melting water, literally walking through bogs at 12,000 feet. And the water you're in was probably snow 20 minutes ago. That's how, it's like 32.1 degree water. My feet were freezing. Did I wish I had something different, some camp shoes? Yeah, but usually by camp, my feet would be warm. But I just get in my tent and get my shoes off, and I always have sleep socks. I will mention that. I always have at least one pair of socks. That's usually with my sleeping bag that I just get dry socks on. If it's a really wet trip, sometimes I'll take some kind of foot powder because you've got to take care of your feet. It's like the most important part that you have to take care of especially if you're hiking long distances. So, but I just use my trail shoes for everything. Now, if I come to a stream crossing and I know that maybe it's the only major crossing of the day, I will take my shoes off. I'll take my little gaiters off. I'll take my socks out. I'll take my insoles out. I'll put the shoe back on, cross, wring it out the best I can, put everything back in there. Does it then get wet? Yes, but at least it's not saturated. But if I'm on a trail and I'm getting wet every hour or two and it's not super cold, I'll just plow on through. That's just something you have to, if it works for you, it saves you some weight. It's not uncomfortable to me unless it's cold. It's not uncomfortable to me. I get it. That will be uncomfortable for a lot of folks. So carry Crocs or something as a light camp shoe. There's no shame in taking care of your feet and having happy feet. So yes. Does that answer? Yeah. I will say about trail shoes though, I do see a lot of people on trail. In the Sierra, I see this a lot. You see people doing the John Muir Trail, and I've done parts of that and some off trail and so on the JMT. I see these big packs, and again, I don't mean that as a judgment, but it's a little bit scary to me when I see what looks like a heavy pack and trail shoes. A lot of folks are going to trail shoes because a lot of folks are, and it saves a lot of weight off your feet. But I would encourage people to work into that. Get your pack lighter first before you go to trail shoes. I just think it's really risky on feet and ankles to do that first. So that's just a little, words of wisdom, I guess. Yeah, I wore boots for the longest time, but I started getting lighter before I went to lighter footwear. And I would encourage you, if you're going to backpack with your shoes on, do all your hikes. If you go for, I see people day hiking in their hiking boots. Again, no judgment, but if that person wants to even think about switching to trail shoes, start hiking in trail shoes, day hike in your trail shoes, get your ankles stronger. Once your ankles are strong, it's fine. I mean, I feel like if I had to carry 35 or 40 pounds with trail shoes, I'd be fine. I'd be more careful, use trekking poles, things like that. I turn my right ankle at least once a day, but thank goodness, is there any real wood to knock on? I haven't severely sprained an ankle yet. I've hurt a couple times, but my ankles are just gotten stronger, and I'll roll it and I'll be like, okay, that stung a little, but walk it off, it's fine. But that took years to work up to that. So cool. Next question. Yep.
Water filtration systems. Someone's curious about if you have recommendations for a filtration system that works well in cold versus warm temperatures.
Mm-hmm. So water filtration or water systems that work better in cold versus warm. I mean, any of the filters, I mean, I usually use a filter, and I will just pull it off my pack here. I'm trying new things. I'm trying to go on some trips. I'm going back to bottles. So I'm trying to learn new things, and I'm learning to use, I have one of these quick draws new from Platypus. So they'll use a bottle. You can use them on a smart water bottle. It's just a squeeze filter. So you can use it you can get it with a bag. You can use pretty much any of the squeeze bags, even the Sawyer bags work on here. The smart water bottles plug on, and you can use that as a squeeze. You can drink right out of it. You can filter into other things, but I prefer an inline system. So a Platypus bag, I used 2-liter hosers. So it comes with the hose. Imagine this filter's not there. Comes with a hose, 2 liters. Most trips I'll carry a couple of these, so I've got up to 4 liters if I need it, unless it's a trip where there's just water everywhere. I'll usually carry a couple of these, so I can carry up to 4 liters if I need it. But I take the hose and I figure out where I want this to be. And for me, on the side of my pack, I put this on the side of my pack. That's about where I want the filter to be. You can put it wherever you want. I cut the hose right there. I plug this in. I put this, I don't know if you could see it when it was on my pack, but I usually put it on the side of my pack. This comes up over my shoulder and I'm just drinking right through my filter. The people that object to that, and I get it, it slows the flow down. If you're a person that just likes to gulp water, you're probably not going to like this. But with a clean filter, to me, the flow is fine. But what I like about this is when I get to a water source, I take my pack off, I pull this out, I get the amount of water I want, I screw this back on. Before I get it tight, I push the air out, which I think makes the water flow better. I push the air out, then I do it down. I put it on my pack. I don't always remember to test it. Usually I'll get my pack on, and darn it. You know, I have to pull it back out and kind of squeeze it a little, but usually kind of make sure it's flowing before you put it back on the pack. And then I go. So I can literally, if it's an easy water source, I can get water and be on trail in 2 minutes. And I love that simplicity. I love efficiency. Efficiency is a big word. And it doesn't answer, Elliot, your question about what do I hope to learn directly, but I'm always looking for ways to be more efficient. So sometimes this was one that I discovered. I discovered, most people, including me in the past, this goes on the inside of your pack to protect it, which is not a bad idea, as long as they don't leak. And I've, so far, again, knock on whatever, I hope that's real wood, they haven't leaked on me. But when I was hiking with other thru hikers on the CDT, they would stop and they were doing this method, and they'd stop and get water and just take off down the trail, drinking through their filter off their squeeze bottle. And I'm still sitting there trying to get my bag back into my pack. So I learned on that trip, just put it on the outside of the pack, as long as you're not in thorns or it's super hot or super cold. I'll just put this on the side of my pack, because then I can just grab it, do it kind of like they're doing, put it back, go. Because I'm usually the slowest person in the group. So if I get behind, I'm never seeing them again. Maybe in camp, because I tend to hike a little later sometimes. But in cold, you have to be careful. Filters, you have to be careful. I think I froze my last filter. Wasn't sure. Something was weird after I think it might have froze. So this is a brand new one. Haven't even put water in it yet. On a super cold trip where I'm just worried about maybe this being a freeze problem, then I may just use bottles, or I may just use this. You can put an insulator on the hose, and then I might use a squeeze filter that I can then put that filter in my pack or in my jacket in the tent to keep it warm. Or I'll use Aquamira. I'll use a chemical treatment or something. I don't have to worry about that freezing. So in the cold, I may not do this, but I mean, usually at night, if it's dropping into the 20s, I'll just bring this into my pack and I'll put something on it to insulate. And if I'm careful, they don't freeze. What you have to be careful of is in the morning, if it's 27, 28 degrees and you're hiking and this is on the outside of your pack, you got to be careful. But I have found a way using a little pad, like I'll take this little pad this little pad I use for everything. It goes under my sleeping pad. I have an air mattress. There is a Jupiter Hikes. This is his sleeping pad. Could I sleep on an 8-inch pad? Not very well. I have a 2-inch Thermarest air mattress, but I'll put this under it just to protect the pad. I'll use this at lunch. I use it as a sit pad. I'll use it on the outside of my pack to cover this, to insulate it a little bit. So insulation in some way, or just get away from using filters and use a chemical thing for that kind of trip. I hope that answers the question.
Is there a reason that you have the flatless one that just has a small hole versus the one that you?
The big zip, So the question is why I use this one versus the big zip, and its weight. The big zip, they have these with a big zipper opening. So the only time this is really a challenge is if you're getting water out of a lake or something not flowing. But I have found that I can take this, and if the water's pretty good, you just do a series of these. It might take 10 of them to get enough water in there, but it works. But they're just much lighter than the zipper ones. They're simpler. There's less that can go wrong. Those zipper ones work great. I don't think I've ever seen them fail. But yeah, it's just, for me, if I can save a few grams and it works, and people talk about these being hard to feel, and I agree, they can be, but they're not hard enough to fill up to outweigh the benefits, pun intended, to outweigh the benefits of it being lighter. For me, personal choice. So I think I said that earlier. If I have a choice between two things and they both work, I'm going to go with the one that's lighter every time, because every ounce adds up. So yeah. And I'll usually, if I don't take a second one of these, I'll take if 3 liters is going to be enough, sometimes I'll take this. And I'll usually also have some Aquamira. Aquamira is a chlorine dioxide treatment that comes in some larger bottles, but if I can dig in my pocket, let's see. Oh, that's not it. Where is it? Oh, I should show you this. Oh, this is a little trick too. I just put my Aquamira in some smaller little dropper bottles. You can get these. Gossamer Gear might sell them, but Mountain Laurel Designs, I think, sells these. I don't know if Six Moon sells them on their site. I literally got these from like this US Plastics thing online that sells all kinds of like lab equipment and dropper bottles. And so I can put enough Aquamira in this to last me almost a week if this is all I'm using, if I filled them up. But I always have these as a backup if this freezes. This saved me on the CT when I thought my freezer, mine had froze, and I won't get into how it would just, something was funny. It was bubbles. I'm like, okay, I've compromised that thing. I'm taking a risk, just trusting that. So I used this. Fortunately, that was near the end of the trip. So I had enough of this to get through and didn't get sick. I was also going to show this little thing is made by Sawyer too. It's called, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's just a coupler. So what I do with that is I can also, because this bigger Sawyer filter has these adapters on there. Put that on, put this on, or another platy bag, just something that, a platy bag or something that fits that. I'll put that on, but not so tight that air can't get in, and I'll make a gravity feed. So like at camp or even at lunch sometimes, because drinking through your filter, like I said, slows the flow down. And sometimes, yeah, you just feel like guzzling some water. So I'll do this sometimes at lunch. And now I've got a bottle that I can put, some electrolytes in or something. I don't want to put electrolytes in here and have it get through my filter. Probably would filter out, but it certainly wouldn't be good for the filter. So I'll do that if I want to do some electrolytes or something like that. I will also do that for like my water so now I've got a liter of treated water so I don't have to boil with my stove. So that's a little hack and something that I'm glad that I learned. I never saw much use of this until I discovered the gravity feed. All right. How we doing?
Someone is curious about lightweight packs and tents.
Okay. So the first thing I would say, so the question is about lightweight packs and tents. Packs, shelters, or tents and your sleeping bag and pad, your sleep system. That's what we call the big three. That's the three items in your pack that weigh the most. That's the three places where you can save the most weight. And I still have paint all over my hands in case you guys wonder what is on. Yeah. Anyway, I digress. But they were asking about shelters and packs. So my favorite pack, I've used several. I've got 2 or 3 favorite packs. This is probably the one I use the most, from Hyperlight. I personally like this pack because it's comfortable for me. Under 30 pounds, it's comfortable. At 30 pounds, it becomes less comfortable. And yes, when it was new, it was very bright white. It is not white anymore. I have one hanging on the wall here at the shop that's got 4,000 miles on it. It's not even this white. But it's got a simple suspension. It'll carry 25 or less, like a dream, 30 in a pinch, 35 if you have to. But what I like about it is it's waterproof. Even the seams are sealed. So would you throw this in the lake and your stuff stay dry? It'd probably come pretty close, but but don't throw don't throw it in the lake. I will put my sleeping bag in a waterproof roll top Dyneema stuff sack with my sleep clothes and my sleeping bag in there because I do not want those to get wet. If I did fall in the lake, I want to be able to set my tent up and get in a dry bag and sleep clothes. So this is my favorite. I've used Gossamer gear, which I don't know if folks can see this. I'll bring it down in case they can't see it on the web. We carry Gossamer gear and we carry 6 Moon Designs here at the shop. There's a lot of good ultralight packs. Those are the 3 brands that we carry. You can get a good pack that'll carry 30, 35 pounds with a pack that weighs 2 to 2.5 pounds. When you start getting under that 2-pound weight range, you start giving up even more suspension and stuff. I have a pack from Gossamer Gear that I like, a true ultralight pack that weighs 18 ounces. But it's okay. It's fine at 20 pounds, but at 25, it's not comfortable anymore. It doesn't have a frame. It's just super light. But I use that one for fun. If I'm going around timberline in 2 or 3 days in the middle of summer and I'm going really light, it's a great little pack. I mean, that's almost half a pound or a pound right there. This is a 2-pound pack. That one weighs just over a pound. So your pack, a good pack should weigh under 3 pounds. I would call a lightweight pack. An ultralight pack is going to weigh, under 1.5 pounds, if you just by definition, roughly. But the thing I'll qualify about packs is as you're lightening up your gear, especially on those big 3, your pack should be the last thing you lighten up, in my opinion. Because if you go to a 2-pound backpack, but you're still carrying 35 or 40 pounds, yeah, maybe your pack weighed 6 pounds. Okay, you took 4 pounds out of your pack, but your pack still weighs 35 pounds or so. The pack's not going to be comfortable. So what I advise people to do, if you're trying to lighten up every of those big 3, lighten your sleep system up, lighten your shelter up, and then your pack. Lighten your other stuff up, get your clothing down to what works without having a lot of extra stuff. As far as shelters go, again, I think, a 1-person shelter shouldn't weigh more than 2 pounds. There's some, 2.5 pounds. My one that I use a lot, I think that 6 Moons has stopped making it. And if they're watching, they're going to not be happy with me because I have their tent in a Hyperlight stuff sack. Whitney, if you're watching, anyway, I love you, buddy, if you're watching. Whitney works for 6 Moons. But this is the tarp. Sorry, I don't have usually would be doing it. If it wasn't for doing both of these ways, I'd have a screen up and we could show you some things. But it's basically like a little pyramid tarp, plenty big for one, weighs about 8 ounces. They have stopped making it in this material, but you can get the nylon version, which we have, that weighs 13 ounces, still really light. And then it uses an inner tent. This is my inner bug net, which weighs about 10 ounces. So my shelter, not counting stakes and ground sheet and all that, weighs about 18 ounces. So that's pretty light. There are some shelters, Z-Packs, I think, has an all-in-one shelter that weighs about 15 or 16 ounces. That's really light, lighter weight Dyneema than this. This is like 7.5 ounces per yard or something like, or something. Is it 7.5? 7.5 something. It's 0.75 weight. I think their ultralight stuff is like 0.5, so it's really thin. But the one way you're going to save weight, this shelter uses one single trekking pole. I'm not carrying any other poles. So if you don't use trekking poles, there are optional poles that you can buy that weigh about 3 ounces, so still pretty light. But the main way you're going to lighten up your shelter is to use a shelter that uses your trekking poles. That's going to save you at least a pound right there in not having poles. I'm okay with a very cozy, this is big enough for one person. Elliot, how tall are you? You're like 6. Yeah, you would not fit in here. You would be bulging out both ends and sticking out from the end from this thing. I'm 5'8" almost, and I fit in here okay. I would say up to 6 feet. 6'1" would be starting to push it. But there are bigger tents. This Lunar Solo weighs about 25 ounces. Similar configuration to my tent, except the inner tent is sewn into the tarp. So it's a single wall tent with a net and a floor built in, weighs about 25 ounces. And it's probably got twice as much room. There's one of these in my future, because when I'm out backpacking, I want a little more room than this. When I'm through hiking and I'm just sleeping, this is plenty. Even backpacking, it's usually fine. If the weather's bad and you just want to get in your tent and get out of the rain, this is really small. This would be really nice. A lot. You can sleep, 2 people my size could sleep in this one person tent. A lot of folks, a lot of thru hikers carry 2-person, lightweight, but 2-person tents. And I get it. They have a lot of space like this, but they're heavier. Do you need a 2-person tent for 1 person? Maybe you do. If it makes you sleep better, it's fine. But there's some pretty roomy 1-person tents that are going to be lighter out there. So I would encourage people to, for a 1-person tent, to be 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds or under, 2.5, 3 pounds for a 2-person tent. I mean, if you're sharing that, you think about a 3-pound tent, it's 1.5 pounds a person. That's pretty good, because you can, most double wall tents, you can split them up. Yeah. Oh, this is my ground sheet, which is this. There's a couple of these in here. This is just, it's called Polycro. It's the plastic that you buy at Home Depot to put over your windows, and then you take a heat gun and you kind of heat it and it shrink wraps, and it's kind of a cheap way of winterizing windows. It makes an ultralight ground sheet. So this is the ground sheet trimmed to fit my shelter. So it weighs a little more than 1 ounce. Is it super durable? No, I mean, but on a through hike, 4 or 5 month through hike, I might use 3 of them, maybe 4. So my next through hike, I may do something different, even if it's heavier, because I do feel like environmentally that's a lot of plastic, even though it's fairly light. It's not biodegradable, but you know, I feel kind of bad about the plastic, but I usually use them until they're well past when I should get rid of them. There's holes everywhere. I did have one time that got a little rip in it. I'd been using it for like 3 days, and it had a little rip on the side, and I shook it out in the morning. And when I shook it, the little cut was right between my hands, and I went, whoosh, and now I had, and it was like 3 days old. I just overlapped it and used it for a while anyway. But just yeah, it's just lightweight. And another little trick that I've taught myself in the last year or so is I don't put my stakes in the ground in a stuff sack anymore. Stuff sacks don't weigh much, but I just take these and just roll them up in that. And that one's, yeah, it saves a couple grams or whatever it is. I mean, I have a super ultralight little stuff sack, but it's just less stuff. And if I didn't mention the word simplicity and efficiency are my favorite words. Anything I can do to go simple. So this, I'm not trying to get my stakes in the bag. I just grab them and roll them up and throw them in my pack. If this is wet, it goes in the back pocket of my pack. If this is wet, it goes on top of my pack until I can get it dry. But Tyvek works really well. We also sell some Tyvek. So Tyvek for the size shelter I have would weigh about 4 or 5 ounces. Still not bad. And that would probably last. I know through hikers who have used a Tyvek ground sheet for an entire through hike, and it's been fine. So, hi. Yeah, we're closed actually. Yeah, we are. This is a presentation we're doing. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. We opened at 11 tomorrow. Oh yeah. Does that answered the question?
Yeah, there was
Okay.
another question. If there's one piece of gear that you use that people wouldn't think of, then you show.
I thought you were going to say my favorite piece of gear.
Well, that, I think maybe that.
Maybe it is.
Yeah,
All right. My umbrella. It's my favorite piece. It's hard to pick a favorite piece of gear, but usually when somebody asks, what's your favorite piece of gear? 9 times out of 10, it's my umbrella. And it took a while for it to be my favorite piece of gear. But yeah, what was their question specifically? It wasn't necessarily favorite,
Well,
but
if there's a piece of gear that people wouldn't think of that you use. Which I feel
so
like I
a
would
piece of
think
gear that
about.
people wouldn't think of, a lot of people don't think of using an umbrella. I mean, I get all kinds of weird looks going down the trail with my umbrella. But yeah, so it's for sun. Are you guys superstitious if I open it?
No.
Anybody superstitious? I always ask because somebody might be. Just to show you what the size is. But it's silver on one side. This is made by Six Moons. There's various ones. Six Moons. This is one. They make some kind of nylon plastic. This is a carbon one. So this is like just under 7 ounces. It reflects a little bit of heat. So if it's a 95-degree day, you can kind of create your own shade. And the beauty of it is when you don't have hair, I can take my hat off, I can open my shirt up, I can ventilate because I'm not going to sunburn. I've got this. And I think just taking my hat off and opening the shirt up does more than just blocking the sun. It's hard to quantify, but it probably lowers the temperature 10 or 15 degrees. If there's a little bit of breeze, 15 degrees, it's way more comfortable. Yeah, if you're walking down a asphalt thing on a road walk on the Pacific Northwest Trail like I was a few years ago, and I seem to hit these road walks at 3:30 in the afternoon every day down in the valley, 95 degrees. Umbrella was out and cars driving by like, but it's my favorite piece of gear because of sun, rain. I'm up to 5 uses for this now. Let me see if I can remember them. I wrote them down in case I forgot them, but sun, rain, a windbreak for my stove. So, I can do that, give it a little bit of a windbreak. I can lay it on the ground like this and use it kind of as a table when I'm pulling stuff out of my pack, just to not throw stuff in the dirt, use it like a dressing table. That was 4. Oh, number 5, bear deterrent. Any ideas? So I'm in Shenandoah National Park on the AT, and I'm walking down the trail, and there's one of the biggest black bears I've ever seen. Huge black bear. I don't know, 30, 40 feet off the trail. And he's just walking with me. He doesn't seem to be like, he's not aggressive, but I'm walking and I'm talking to him. So I know he knows I'm there, but he was just kind of not going away. So it was making me a little nervous. So I'm like, pulled my umbrella out and I opened it up and I went, he didn't even look, he was gone so fast. So I'm like, use number 5. No bear spray was needed, just my umbrella. Anyway, and the theme of that too applies to a lot of stuff. If you can get multiple uses out of one piece of gear, so I'm pretty proud of 5 uses of that. But that's my favorite piece of gear, and one that a lot of people don't think of backpacking. More and more people are, because you're just slowly people are starting to use them. But yeah.
Do you use that in place of a rain jacket?
Good question. Do I use this in place of a rain jacket? I always have an ultralight rain jacket. This is an old one that it's my favorite little jacket made by Dynafit. Weighs about 6.5 ounces, but it's starting to get a little worn. But I tend to only put this on if I need it for warmth. If it's a cold, rainy day, I tend to not wear it unless I need it for warmth. But I always have it for warmth on a cold, wet day. But I also have it if it's too windy for this. Got to have something. And this, keeps me dry enough. I've never really found any rain jacket that would keep me 100% dry. This one does pretty good. But the answer is, if I don't need it for warmth, no. If I want to keep my legs a little bit drier, maybe it is a little bit cooler. A friend of mine, this is a fashion statement. A friend of mine, this is Sil Poly. I thought it was Sil Nylon. He said it was Sil Poly. It's a skirt. It weighs 2 ounces. I'll wear this, and I don't know if the guys on the camera will be able to see this, but I just wear this and it covers down past my knees. Remember, not waterproof shoes. They're going to be wet anyway. So if it's cool enough and I don't want my shorts or pants or whatever, if I've got pants on, I may roll those up just to keep those dry, put this on, and it just airflow. I've hiked with a lot of gals and even some guys that wear kilts. That I haven't done that yet, but a lot of through hike gals wear hiking skirts. It's just cooler. But this is so much cooler than rain pants if you need those. If I don't need them, I just kind of let my legs get wet. If it's not cold, I don't need those. But if you're walking through like waist high wet grass in the morning, this works great. So have a friend. You can buy these. I think Mountain Laurel Designs makes them. I think Z-Packs has one, or you just need a friend that makes you stuff. And that was his prototype. He said, "Here, this is yours. Give me feedback." I gave him feedback. His next one for him was a little bit better. That one works great. So yes, I still carry rain gear, but the umbrella lets me go pretty minimal on that, and it lets me not wear it. People ask me, "Do you attach this or do you carry it?" I usually carry it. If I'm on a long straight stretch and I know I'm not going to be rounding bends and stuff like that, I may, with some little bungees, there's a little kit that we sell that you can attach it. I just put one of my trekking poles away and I just carry it, because then whichever way I'm going on the trail, I can put it where it's the most effective, whether that's rain or sun. I used to, like everybody, nobody likes to walk in the rain, hike in the rain. I still don't. I don't dread it anymore. This is so much more comfortable than hiking in rain gear and sweating and getting wet anyway. That was my experience. So this at least is comfortable. Yeah, you have to futz with it a lot, but to me, it's well worth it. Cool. Okay. How do you do it on time? Cool. Yes. Yeah. I do. It's packed. I brought this one just as an option in desert hikes. This is by Xpad. Xpad Thermarest makes one too. They just haven't been available, so we got these from Xpad. I love these in the desert. I don't have to worry about thorns or flats. So on the PCT, I use one of these through the desert. On the CDT, I use something like this the entire hike, and my friends were like, "Why?" But I just did. I think I replaced it at halfway because they do kind of start to flatten. But I do use a quilt now for the first time a lot, which doesn't have a bottom. laying directly on that's not super comfortable. Plus, it's not super comfortable anyway. So my favorite pad, see if I can dig without, there it is. I like the Thermarest pads. X-Pad makes some good, it's just an air mattress. I like the Thermarest. This particular model is a 3-season rated. This is a new one. The old one, when you would hold it up to the light, it was all black inside from breathing air into it. So on the new one, I just use a little pump sack now to keep my breath out of there. I'm not going to blow this up, but I use a full length. It's about 2.5 inches thick, and it weighs about 12 ounces. It's the lightest full length 2.5-inch pad going. So, and it works. What people don't like about the Thermarest is they can be kind of crinkly noisy. And I get that. If you're sharing a tent with someone and they've got one and you don't, they're going to keep you up all night, things like that. But I'm a light sleeper, and laying on this doesn't bother me. I will hear someone else's before I hear the one that I'm laying on. I can't even explain it other than maybe my sleeping bag muffles it. But that's my favorite because it's super comfortable. I've had really good luck with durability. I've had people say that they flat them all the time. I keep knocking on wood. I'm not really that superstitious, but at the risk of jinxing myself, I've been using Thermarest products for most of my adult life, and I think I've literally had 1 or 2 flats. Am I lucky, or am I just super careful? But I treat this thing like porcelain. It never hits anything but the inside of my pack and the inside of my tent. I never lay it on the ground. I don't let it even touch the ground. 1 pine needle and you've got a hole. Be careful when you store them at home. If you have cats, I think that's, yeah. When I had a cat for years, I had to make sure, yeah, because she liked to lay on everything. So this could never be left alone in the apartment. But they're reasonably, I find them to be reasonably durable and light. X-Pad makes some nice ones. There's several different nice brands, but as an ultralighter, I still carry an air pad. It's just, I'm a light sleeper, not the greatest sleeper even at home. So anything I can do to get a better night's sleep. I'll have some kind of pillow, even, something light, but because I just sleep better. What's that?
It's so smart that you store it in the pump stack.
So yeah, I mean, usually you roll them, or they have a little stuff sat and you roll them. But for me, the way I pack, and this you just discovered, this pump sack's huge, by the way. This is the new one. But yeah, I'll just fold it flat like that, put it in there. That protects it. My sleeping bag goes in the bottom. I just put this right on top, and then it just, or down the back or something like that. Yeah, and that works well for me. My pillow, it's stuffed in the very bottom, and I'm not going to pull it out at this point, but I use various ones. These little Cedar Summit, I don't know if you can see that, guys on the camera, I don't know if you can see that, but Cedar Summit, this is probably my favorite. It's about 2.5, 3 ounces, so it's pretty good. It's a blow up. It's got a nice cover on it. It's about that big and about that thick. Super comfortable, but sometimes I'll just, I have this old thing that Thermarest used to make. I don't know if they still make it. It's basically like a miniature pillowcase out of like this light fleece, and it weighs like 1.25 ounces, and I'll stuff my jacket in there. But I'll take this on if I think I might be sleeping in my jacket, I can't sleep without a pillow. I'll take this, something like that. I've experimented with all kinds of pillows, but some of the crazy light ideas don't work for me. So I need a pillow to sleep well. So to me, that's a luxury item that's worth carrying, some kind of pillow anyway. Oop. Did I mention Paleo Bars? That's what fell on the floor. And there's the bag. Now I'm finding everything. Paleo Bars. I think I found these at grocery outlet too. Also very calorie dense. I think I did the math, and it's like 150 calories per ounce. It's really good. I ate a lot of wheat and a lot of soy, and so these are wheat free and soy free, and so and a lot of calories. There's 230 calories in that. It's pretty good. Okay. Did that answer that question? I hope. This is fun. I still feel like I haven't answered your question. Well, kind of, but I will get back. I'm going to be driving in my van. It's like, oh, look what I just learned.
This goes on YouTube, right? Yeah, just post more things on the comments on YouTube.
I could do that too. Yeah, I could do that. Yeah. Unless I totally turn off next week when I'm driving. Probably not.
Well, if you, I don't think you guys got an opportunity to ask any more questions.
Yes.
You can also email Gary too if you.
Yeah.
want to think about it.
Yeah.
Just, like, give him a written list and- Yeah.
Please.
I have a quick one.
Sure.
A lot of the stuff that you've described is kind of like newer technology, new materials and stuff. Is there anything that you think they don't make it like they used to, or like the older version is better than the modern technology?
No, that's a great question too. Well, certainly ultralight gear. I mean, all this ultralight gear is amazingly durable, but like backpacks, sleeping bags, pads, everything. I mean, things used to be a lot tougher. I mean, I used to have backpacks I'd drag all over the place. I mean, I got 4,000 miles out of one of these, but I treat it like I want it to last. If I treated that like I used to treat my old heavy pack or an old mountaineering pack, it wouldn't last 1,000 miles probably. So, materials have gotten lighter and things, and they're definitely durable for what they are, but you have to have a mindset that you're going with lighter gear, and which means more care. Take care of it. I mean, I've seen through hikers walk into camp at the end of the day and take their pack off and just throw it down. And I look at their pack and it's like the frame sticking out the top, and it's just like, just set your pack down. So, but with the older packs, you just throw it down. It's not going to hurt it. So yeah, durability on stuff is maybe in some ways less, but with the appropriate care, as the weight goes down, how hard you are on it should match that. Durability's still been good. I mean, I got 4,000 miles out of one of those. Is it in great shape? No, it finally started to kind of come apart, but I'm pretty happy with that. And that was through most of the, 99% of that was on through hikes. If I'd just been my avid backpacking since, I'd still be using that pack. Because I mean, 4,000 miles for most of us is years and years. It's a lifetime almost. So, yeah.
Quick question, it's a this or that, for bear can or your sack type thing?
Good. I was wondering, yeah, nobody asked me about bears, and nobody till now, nobody asked me about bears, and nobody asked me if I carry a gun. That's usually the questions I get. So thank you. I was ready for those questions and didn't get them. You guys are more informed than that. You guys are you're more informed. I mean, and I'm picking on folks, but just people that really don't know, that's the question I get. Well, what about bears? What about, do you carry a gun? No. But I do take bears seriously, sometimes not as seriously as I should, but so far I've only had one bad bear experience, and that was in the first year or two of my backpacking life when I was in my 20s in a national park, Great Smokies. Bear got some of our food, but bluff charged us. I mean, it was kind of scary. But I use a hard-sided bear canister in places that you have to use them. Sierra, some places in the Olympics, any national park, a lot of national parks require them. They're just the Olympic coast. They require them, Olympic National Park coast. I use these if they're required. Sierra mainly, because they're the best protection against bears getting into your food than anything. Though there was a bear in the Adirondacks in New York that learned how to open one of these. And I read, like in the last year, she did finally die of natural causes. But they would not let people use hard-sided canisters in that particular area. She had learned to open and could open them every time. It's just like, they don't know how she learned to do it. And she doesn't seem to have passed it down because there's no other bears that she didn't like hold class and teach them all how to do it. But these are your best, but it's 2.5 pounds. It's hard to pack. It's heavy. It will fit in this pack with ultralight gear. It'll fit in there. I will use an Ursack, which is just depending on what they are. They're either Kevlar or there's some kind of crazy heavy thread, some kind of Kevlar type thing. I will use these anytime these aren't required, but I feel like I need good bear protection, especially like in the Wind River Range, which is becoming a favorite place. I've done a couple trips there in the last few years in Wind River Range in Wyoming. There are grizzlies. There's not a lot of them, but they are there. If there's grizzly bears, I'm going to protect my food. I'm going to take extra things. I will use in these in particular, I will use these odor-proof sacks inside to cut the smell down a little bit. I don't think they're 100%. I mean, if the bear gets close enough, they can probably, bears can smell like, forgot how many hundreds of times more better than we can. It's a lot. They can, I think I read somewhere that a bear with the right wind conditions could smell your food cooking on the stove from like 15 miles away or something. I don't know how true that is, but it's out there. I use these op sacks all the time. If I'm in a place that I'm not really concerned about bears that much, but I want to protect I want to be careful with my food, I always use these. I'll hang it if I need to. Hanging your food, I usually have a way to hang my food. In places where bears are getting more habituated, hanging starting to just not be a good way to protect your food. Mainly because most people don't hang their food properly. It's too close to the tree, it's too low, various reasons, or they hang it right and the bears have just learned to go over to the tree and cut the rope. You know, they've just learned. So hanging is getting less reliable. You know, in the middle of nowhere wilderness, it's probably still a good way. But yeah, I hope I'm answering your question. But Ursack, if I'm really concerned about bears, this if I have to. This is just, I mean, this is the full one. So this is a full size up to 9 days, and this has a critter sack built in. This is the full deal, weighs 14 ounces. This weighs 41 ounces and has the same capacity, if not even a little bit more. With the Ursack, they suggest, if you look on their site, they suggest first line of the fence, even with this, hang it. Still hang it if you can. If you can't, tie it to something, you know, a big enough tree that a bear can't break the tree. Tie it to something so it can't get hauled off. In the Wind River Range at 10,000, 11,000 feet, there's nothing to tie it to sometimes. So you literally tie it good and tight and you take it couple hundred yards away and you lay it down somewhere. There have been either none or very few instances of bears hauling off an Ursack. I read a report somewhere recently where someone said a bear was trying to haul his off. I don't know if it did, but they generally, if they find it, they're just going to bat it around. If they can't get in it, they're not going to like take it back to the den. They're just not. They're not going to travel with it. They're going to try to get in it. So that's your third resource. And in that case, I mean, you're not only protecting your food, but you're protecting the bear, because a bear that gets habituated, you work for the Forest Service, you know, if a bear gets habituated, they're going to get taken out at some point. They're going to get taken somewhere and given a chance probably. And then when they come back and get in trouble again, they get shot. And that's just, I don't want to be responsible for a bear. And I don't want to lose my food in the middle of nowhere to a bear either. That would not be good. Does that answer? But yeah, I use the op sacks. I probably shouldn't advertise this. In some situations where the bears just aren't an issue, I'll use these and my food will be with me in camp on the ground. Basically, I won't use it as a pillow like some hikers do, but it's there. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose your food to mice, raccoons, that kind of things. Outside of national parks or places like I did the Tahoe Rim Trail last July before it closed to the fires. And all the scuttlebutt on the little app that I was using, the little map app, people would put notes and, oh yeah, bear came through camp last night, tried to get this, tried to do that. I didn't see a bear the whole time. I stealth camp a little bit more, or I try to use campsites out of the way and back off the trail and not those overused spots, because those are the ones that get frequented by bears the most. So, but I was careful. I took my URSAC because of the reports I was hearing. It's like, okay, I need to take it seriously. I didn't sleep with my food, but I took an URSAC. I didn't take, a lot of people were taking hard side, and that's fine. That's your best protection, unless you're in the Adirondacks. We used to be. Okay. That's what I got. I didn't have to refer to my list a single time. What did I have? Well, but I just, it's like, if, yeah, tips and tricks. I think I talked about most of these.
If there's anything you think of.
Tooth powder in place of toothbrush can save you a couple ounces. My dentist said it's okay for short trips. Don't do it for a through hike. So it's good. It's just, it's kind of abrasive, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, I think I talked about most of that. There is, can I show you one thing? This is a little thing that I came up with myself. If you're on a long hike, is it just me, or do you guys stink when you're on a long hike? This is probably, it probably is just me. That's why I asked. So good to know. Well, that's why I carry this. This is the bottom third of one of these when it's kind of seen its usefulness, because they still don't leak. It's usually the seal or something breaks. So I cut this off. This is a little basin that I can dip water, get well away from the stream. I take a little dot bronzers. I put just a little few drops in there. I can wash out my shirt. I can do trail laundry in this. This weighs a ½ ounce. With soap, it probably weighs an ounce. That allows me not only to feel a little better. Yeah, we all get smelly. I'm fine with it, but it does feel good to kind of get the worst of it off, right? As a through hiker, I always try to do this when I'm getting ready to hitch a ride into town. So it's like, oh, you're talking about feeling self-conscious. And I've had more than one person give me a ride that commented, it's like, you know, because I always, I'm sorry, I know I smell. It's like, you know what? You really don't smell that bad, because I took the time to clean. And they've told me horror stories about people getting in their car that hadn't done anything. There are through hikers that like to see how bad they can smell, and they're getting in people's cars, for gosh sakes. Anyway, that's a little hack that I won't take it on every trip, but if it's going to be a warm trip or a long trip, it just feels good to just kind of get the worst of it off. And another benefit is I can take less clothing. Somebody asked the last one, what did they ask? The embarrassing question on the last thing we were talking about through hiking, how many pairs of underwear we take. And Lucas takes 2, and I was just like, 1. It's gross, but because I can wash it out. If I couldn't wash it out, I'd probably take 2 and rinse them out. You know, I don't like to wash certain things out in the stream, but this allows me to get water out of the stream, and whether I'm using soap or not, and just get away from the stream and do that. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Let me mention one other little thing that I'm kind of starting to do. There's a lot of us out there these days, especially in popular places. We sell them, and you can get them other places. There are the little poop bags that some places you have to use. Fortunately, around here you don't. But like, I'm getting ready to probably go down to southern Utah and Escalante, Grand Staircase. You have to use them. So if you have to do your business, you got to haul it out. But under normal backpacking circumstances, you're digging a hole. We really need to cut back on using toilet paper. And I've cut way back. I'm not perfect with it, but there's a lot of natural sources, pine cones, rocks, snow, if there's snow nearby, works great as toilet paper. Might not be pleasant. What's that? The right pine, you have to find the right pine cone. I've used the wrong pine cone before, but most leave no trace folks say, if you use TP, you need to pack it out. Well, that's kind of gross. So I came up with and people just bag it. Well, I came up with like, I will double bag it. And then put it in, this is just a miniature op sack, so odor proof, and throw that in the back of my pack. And then just throw these out at every garbage can I do come across. So that's something I'm gonna start doing. There's a lot of, what's that? There's a lot of toilet paper out there on the trail, and it's just, there's more and more of us. And no, I haven't resorted to that yet. But yeah, I would encourage everybody to look up. I didn't talk about Leave No Trace. Nobody asked, but I would encourage you to look up Leave No Trace. Am I perfect? No, but I'm better and better. That I'm always learning. That's another thing. How can I do that better? And that's one thing I'm going to start doing more, especially in places where, I mean, I usually try to dig a hole just in a spot where nobody's ever going to go. And you can do that. Sometimes you can't. And sometimes you think you're digging a hole in a place that nobody's ever, and then there's toilet paper. And it's like, how did anybody else choose this spot? But it's because there's a gazillion of us out there now. And it's all, and that's great. It's crowded out there, and, I complain like everybody, but it's not my place. It's all our place. And if people are getting out and being safe and not leaving toilet paper, then get out there and have fun. So if we all do our part, it won't be that big a deal. And you meet some great people. So that was the 2 hacks that I wanted to, I think I mentioned everything else. Favorite resources, Gaia. So you guys know Gaia, the map. Far Out app. It used to be called Gut Hook. He has it's a map app for all the longer trails, PCT, but they're adding trails all the time, even some of the shorter trails. The Tahoe Rim Trail was on, it's called Far Out now. Gut Hook used to be the name. It was the guy's trail name, but he, I think, has moved on. So they're like, you take your trail name, we'll rename the app. So it's called Far Out. Yeah. And YouTube. I still learn stuff off YouTube, but I'm discerning enough. I guess I'm expert enough now that I can discern, I'm watching a YouTuber and it's like, no, flip. This guy doesn't know what, this guy or gal doesn't know what they're doing. And they've got 10,000 followers. Interesting. But there's some good people too, to learn stuff from. Yeah, pick up ideas. I mainly use YouTube a lot just to see where people see places I haven't been before. It's like, oh, I didn't know about that place, or I've never been to that place. That looks cool. And it's more for that. So that's a good resource. Jess, I think you had asked me to mention resources. And I use YouTube mainly for that. Yeah, I've learned little pieces of ultralight gear, but it's mainly about, oh, that's a cool spot that I didn't know about in a tucked away corner of Utah or something. So yeah, cool. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. And thank you guys on Zoom for joining us.